Hello everyone, welcome back to another video of Weekend Review. And it's going to be another standalone video. Obviously I explained that in the last video, just trying out these standalone videos as opposed to long-winded ones. And right now, as I alluded to in the previous video, we're going to talk about the ridiculous amount of money that just got passed by the House this week for Ukraine, and that's $40 billion in additional aid. That's on top of what, 14 billion, I believe, maybe more, that we had like a month ago, and that's already gone. Basically, what this money is basically doing, folks. Sure, we're giving them cash, but we're also giving them like military hardware, which from what I'm hearing from reports is not being as effective on the ground. And like one of the big things that they're talking about are these howitzers that they're sending to Ukraine. And look, howitzers are good and fine, but the type of howitzer that they are sending to Ukraine is one that needs to be towed. It's not a self-mobile howitzer artillery piece. It's a towed howitzer that needs to be set up. Now the issue with those is that, of course, it takes time to load and deload and set up and start firing, and then of course the main problem is transportation of these howitzers. The Russians have already started hitting railroads, main roads, bridges, stuff like that. And the Ukrainian armed forces, it's reported that they are running extremely low on military trucks, and they're having to use civilian vehicles, which of course makes it more dangerous for civilians in the area. Now, with that being said, these howitzers, they're not easy to move. They're very... You need a pretty sizable truck if you're going to make any kind of relative distance in any good amount of time. And on top of that, you need to have people trained on how to use these things. Now, and as I said, these howitzers on their own in any given situation, they're fine. But in this particular situation, they're obviously not going to do much. And in my opinion, I find them easy targets for Russian airstrikes or Russian long-range artillery bombardments. So, and I feel like Ukraine is going to have they're going to find it almost impossible to move these things once they receive them, because they're so low on sizable trucks to move these howitzers. So that's beside the point. The point is, what we're really talking about is this $40 billion in aid to Ukraine. And really, where this money's really going is to Zelensky and his cronies in his corrupt government in Ukraine. They're paying their salaries, folks. They've already written articles about it. I've already seen it on the news. Zelensky has said he needs like $7 million or billion a month just to pay the salaries of government people. Here's an idea. Because your country is falling apart, millions of your own people have fled, how about maybe you don't take a salary? Because I don't think money's all that important right now where you are. Or maybe it is, because you're shoveling it into offshore accounts for that way. When you eventually flee Ukraine, you'll be set up somewhere nice and tropical, somewhere where we'll never hear from you again. So, because these are the type of people we're dealing with here. Think of Afghanistan and the president that was installed there after we left, and how quickly he fled with suitcases full of money and just said, peace. So that's literally where bulk of this money is going. It's going to payments to government, quote-unquote government officials in Zelensky's inner circle. And the rest is, I guess, providing military aid. There were some other things that were in it, like combating like hunger that's going to be caused by this whole conflict in that area of the world. I mean, it's just thankfully there's not too much pork inside this bill. unless you want, like, as far as, useless pork that's not Ukraine related. I mean, the whole bill is useless in my opinion, but, it is what it is. But the big thing here is that, and this is something that Tucker Carlson alluded to in one of his monologues, and I forget what article it was, but basically the gist of it is, these Western countries in Europe and America, or North America, are willingly giving away their small arms, their ammunition, tanks, howitzers, artillery, supplies, money, at a time where the future is very uncertain. We don't know where this is going to end. We don't know how far the NATO countries and for extension our own government here in America are willing to take this. So we're giving away all this stuff that's a finite resource where we might need it for ourselves in the future. You catch my drift there? Like, this is all stuff that we might need in case something happens, like an unforeseen consequence. Now, if that's true, if that ends up coming to fruition, and I think, and say Russia and the United States and NATO all get pulled into a hot war with each other, and along with China, let's be real here. China's not going to sit it out. China's going to go for Taiwan if that happens, because they know the United States and NATO can't fight on two international fronts with that amount of distance, effectively at least. And then, of course, look for North Korea to make a move. Look for Iran and Syria, Iran and the other Middle Eastern countries to make moves. Crap will hit the proverbial fan at that point. There would probably be very few continents on the planet, very few countries on the planet that would be safe from this. But anyway, if that comes to fruition, and that happens, and this, of course, this would happen like months and months down the line, because this is going to take a while. It would probably be one of the most important and brilliant ruses, and I think unintentional, because Russia doesn't want a world war. They don't want a world war with the West. Their intentions were made perfectly clear years ago about Ukraine and this whole ordeal, rather. Excuse me. I think it would be one of the biggest and probably, and like I said, unintended ruses that in military history, because what better way to gain an upper hand on your enemy than by having them waste important supplies on an ally that has absolutely no chance of winning. You see what I mean? So right now, the Russians are moving at such a pace that everybody calls it slow. They're bogged down. Their logistics is bad. They don't know what they're doing. They're taking heavy losses. Like, all kinds of theories are floating around out there. When the reality is that they're churning this out. They're grinding down this Ukrainian military in the Donbass region and out to Popasnaya and Odessa and Kherson and Kharkiv, all of these eastern cities. They're grinding them down, wearing them down, and more importantly, I think mentally wearing them down. That's the real thing. The Russians, they're fine. They are motivated. They're upbeat. They have the wind at their back. They've got plenty of allies from all around the world. I mean, if you read international news, there are militias from around the freaking planet that are chomping at the bit to get a fair swing at the West right now, because they look at this war in Ukraine as a complete big giant middle finger to the West and NATO and Western, I should say New Age Western politics, because Western politics right now is a far cry from what it was 60 years ago. Outside of military, of course, military imperialism and all that other stuff. But it comes down to the core principles of Western politics like freedom, liberty, pursuit of happiness, all that stuff. That's a far cry now. Our new Western politics are diversity, inclusion, and open borders, and no sovereignty, and no nationalism, and no national heritage. Everybody's the same. One world government, one world order, global citizenship. But anyway, that's a video for another time. So right now, the Russians are so motivated that they are perfectly comfortable taking this approach because they know they're winning. They know they're winning. If Russia really thought that they were not going to be able to sustain a long-term combat role, you would have seen them at the outskirts of Kiev within the first few weeks, and they would have been bombing the living heck out of it, and they would have leveled the city if they honestly thought they couldn't endure a prolonged conflict. As of right now, seeing that Kiev is still standing, Lviv is still standing, Odessa is still standing, the fact that these cities and the Russians have maneuvered and moved troops like back away from those areas. Again, they had very small regiments in those areas to try and prevent the Ukrainians from resupplying the Donbass region, and also to pull troops and have them stationed for possible counterattacks. I mean, good move. It's a good move, because the Ukrainian military had no idea what the overall objective was, and what small objectives were for some of these units that were positioned all around Ukraine. So as I said, if this comes to fruition as far as supplies dwindling, military supplies dwindling for the West, if and when they get pulled into the conflict militarily, they're going to be undersupplied, they're going to be underarmed, and it's going to be a bunch of green soldiers that have never seen, and I'm being honest here, that have never seen urban conventional warfare to the degree that the Russians are experiencing right now. Sure, our forces here in America, our guys have seen some stuff, in the Middle East, in Afghanistan and Iraq. But let's be fair, the bulk of the major fighting was done 10 plus years ago. Okay? 10, maybe a little less than that, maybe 6 years ago, maybe. But for the last few years, it's been pockets of firefights, yes, but nothing to the degree of facing an enemy that has long-range air support, long-range artillery support, electronic warfare, drones, helicopters, tanks, artillery, well-trained, conventionally trained soldiers that are in a standing army with multiple layers of leadership and logistics and information and intelligence, a full navy at their back. You're talking about a superpower. It has been a very long time since any of our armed forces have dealt with a superpower like that. And it would be a very difficult fight, especially when, like I said, underarmed, supplied, and undertrained. And like I said, I would think it would be one of the most unintended ruses by the Russians. And I think the Russians, they're not stupid. They notice this. They know they are bleeding the West in the most effective way possible, dumping endless amounts of money and military resources into a hopeless endeavor. The Russians know they're not going to lose. And the West is still tricking themselves into thinking that they can just wait it out. And it's a brilliant move. The Russians have no reason to hurry. They see their adversaries in the West, and this is payback, for all of the sanctions and tariffs and canceling their people. It's payback for all of that stuff. That's why they have no reason to hurry, no reason to rush. They're just like, hey, what is it that Napoleon said? Never interrupt your enemy while they're making a mistake. And right now, the West is making all the mistakes. And that's why I think China is in no hurry to take Taiwan. They're all like, hey, the more we wait, the less prepared and the less equipped the West is going to be if we make our move on Taiwan. If they made their move on Taiwan around the same time that the Russians invaded Ukraine, it would have been a nightmare for China. But right now, if they continue waiting, there's going to be a point where America just simply won't have the resources to supply Taiwan. They just won't be able to. And the Taiwanese army, they'll fight. I mean, obviously they're brave. More power to them. They'll fight the Chinese. I don't want China to take Taiwan, and I don't want Russia to continue killing innocent Ukrainian people. I said from the very beginning, the people I feel sorry for are the everyday Ukrainian citizens who want nothing to do with this, who think this is ridiculous on both sides. The Ukrainian soldiers that are not affiliated with the fanatics in the Azov battalion, like the regular Ukrainian army, who are needlessly dying in a hopeless endeavor, like retired Colonel Douglas McGregor said, in a hopeless endeavor, and the Russian people who are just caught in the crossfire of the global backlash, and that's where my feelings, my sympathy lies, is there. And of course, the Russian soldiers, they're just following orders. How many times have our own soldiers said that when people were trying to criticize them and we were defending them? It's all like, what people don't understand about war is that once that first bullet whizzes by your head, politics goes straight into the trash can. You don't care about that anymore. All you care about is surviving. There's a great quote in Black Hawk Down at the end by one of the Delta Force guys. And I know I'm kind of rambling right now. I'll wrap this video up soon. I got a few other things I want to share. But there's a quote by one of the Delta guys who says, when they ask me when I go home, why do you do it? You some kind of war junkie? He says, I don't say a thing to them because they'll never understand why we do it. They'll never understand that it's about the man next to you. And that's really what it comes down to when you're on the front lines. It's about the man next to you, and it's about getting as many people home alive as possible. Politics goes right out the window once you're on the front line. So with that being said, that's how I wanted to open, because I was thinking about all this stuff the last few days. So I'll share some more screenshots I got. Here, this is from the Quartering. I don't know if any of you watch him. I've watched him a very long time, long before I got into politics. He played a card game, Magic the Gathering, that I kind of still play, but he tweeted, I think instead of giving $40 billion to Ukraine, we should solve world hunger instead. Don't you agree? And this is a light jab at all those people who tweeted at Elon Musk about buying Twitter. It's like, why don't you just solve world hunger? Again, because what is it, $40 billion to Ukraine? Elon Musk is buying Twitter for $43 billion. Imagine that. Elon Musk is spending more money on buying Twitter than the U.S. Well, in this one aid package. Collectively, the U.S. has spent more money on giving aid to Ukraine. But I thought this was a nice little getcha, a nice little get on those idiots on Twitter. And then here, Dan Crenshaw is quite possibly one of the most sleazy, underhanded snakes in Congress right now. I am not a fan of this guy. I wanted to like him. I really did. But the more and more I listen to him, the more and more same old McCain, Poppy Bush bull crap, Dick Cheney crap I just heard coming out of him. He's a warmonger. That's all he is, And on domestic issues, he has some good ideas. But when it comes to foreign policy, he needs to be kept far away from that, because he's talking about in voting for the $40 billion to Ukraine. He's like, yeah, because Oh, right. Jake Bungus. Yeah, you sound off about that stuff, but then you vote yes on the 40 billion. He said yes, because investing in the destruction of our adversary's military without losing a single American troop strikes me as a good idea. You should feel the same. This guy is so far removed from reality when it comes to the situation over there. It's hard to believe that he's in a position of power and influence in the United States government. Okay? We are not destroying the Russian military, okay? As a matter of fact, the opposite is happening, as I just went on a 15-minute tangent, a few minutes ago. So, and then Greg Price, Crenshaw literally got ratioed by a guy with less than 300 followers named Chig Bungus. And I'm just like, yes, that's something I could get behind. Chig Bungus for Senate and Texas District 2. Oh, man. And that's true. That's true. He got 1,000 likes, 4,500 replies to Chig Bungus's 7,000 likes and only 38 replies. Oh, man. And I can say probably more than half of these retweets are people talking crap about him again as well. Then we got here Khari Kellerman 2.0. This is a quote. I told Biden, I said, give me another 40 billion or I'll show the world what you've been up to in my country. Well, son of a bee. Zelensky, probably. And you know what? I honestly think that's not far from the truth. Why was it that the United States were so concerned about these quote-unquote biolabs in Ukraine to begin with? Kind of makes you wonder. And the more you dig into that, the more of the same old people are involved. Fauci, NIH, like government money for quote-unquote research, when in reality it was chemical weapons development. Allegedly. I got to throw that in there. And last but not least, Thomas Massey saying Congress has spent almost $500 per U.S. family to support the war in Ukraine. The money isn't being borrowed, it's being printed, and the result will be more inflation. Obviously. Wages can't be increased enough to make up the difference because the money and goods are leaving the country. So Thomas Massey has a great point here. Then Junior comes up and says, military-industrial complex needed their kickback after watching Big Pharma at the trough for the last few years. It's their turn, folks. Not to worry, though. It will be covered as a, quote, mostly peaceful nuclear war if when it escalates. I'm telling you, folks. But the one silver lining here, and honestly, it's going to just be like a nice symbolic victory because I don't think much is going to come from it. It's Rand Paul. And kudos to him for having the guts to stand up and block this Ukraine aid bill. Ukraine U.S. politicians rip Rand Paul over $40 billion aid buildup. Oh, well, of course, Ukraine's going to be upset about this. They're not going to get their checks this week. But he had so many good things to say about this wasteful spending. My oath of office, well, it's only a minute. My oath of office, not to any foreign nation, and no matter how sympathetic the cause, my oath of office is to the national security of the United States of America. We cannot save Ukraine by dooming the U.S. economy. Very good point. In March, inflation hit a 40-year high. Gasoline alone is up 48%, and energy prices are up 32% over the last year. Food prices have increased by nearly 9%. Used vehicle prices are up 35% for the year, and new vehicle prices have increased 12% or more. Yes, inflation doesn't just come out of nowhere. It comes from deficit spending, which is exactly what we're doing. The United States spent nearly $5 trillion on COVID-19 bailouts, leading to one of the highest and most sustained levels of inflation in U.S. history. And I'll stop there. Yes, a good portion of that is from the previous administration under Donald Trump. But I will admit this, Donald Trump got hoodwinked, hook, line, and sinker by this whole COVID stuff. And I've been saying it from the beginning. He's a boomer, okay? And what are boomers most afraid of? scary germs and viruses. I mean, I think Trump is also a bit of a germaphobe as well. He's a health nut. That's why he doesn't, well, not health nut. It's not like he's out there in the gym lifting weights every single day, but he's conscious about not smoking, not drinking alcohol, he doesn't put his body at unnecessary risk. Now, of course, Trump's like me. He loved to eat. I like myself a little McDonald's breakfast every once in a while. I drink a Diet Coke every day. A Diet Coke. I don't drink like 5 or 6. But a lot of it came from that. And again, like I said, Trump fell for it, hook, line, and sinker, just like the rest of the country did. This video is getting way longer than I wanted it to, so I'm going to hurry up and wrap up here. Americans are feeling the pain, and Congress seems intent only on adding to that pain, and by shoveling more money out the door as fast as they can. And I can't help but agree with him. Rand Paul is 100% right. If you watch his full objection, he goes into exactly how else that money could be spent on improving America. And helping people that really need assistance in this country. So hats off to Rand Paul. It's moving to, and of course his ultimate goal was to see the Inspector General oversee the spending of this aid package in Ukraine, for obvious reasons, to make sure it doesn't get dished out corruptly. But of course, our little Chucky crying Chuck Schumer didn't want to have anything to do with that. And it's moving to a procedural vote on Monday. We'll see what happens. Thank you so much for listening to my TED Talks today, and I'll see you all in the next video.